to the Thought Snob Podcast. I'm Paula Swope. Let's get snobby. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Thought Snob Podcast. Today's topic is about going no contact with your family. When is it appropriate? And when does it go too far? Oprah just did a podcast episode about going no contact with family. So I had to watch it because I was going no contact when going no contact wasn't cool. Evidently, 1/3 of Americans are estranged from their families. Going no contact is a growing phenomenon. Now, like with everything else, some of these estrangements are legit, but some of them aren't. And my goal for this episode is to give you the information you need to decide whether going no contact is appropriate or would go too far. Now, if you've read my book, Thought Snob, or listened to this podcast at all, or followed any of my work, you know that I went no contact with my father and half-brother in 2015, and am now estranged from my half-sister and everyone associated with her. I'm my mother's only child, so my siblings and I have the same father, just telling you that, so you know the connection, and I'm the youngest of the three of us. Oprah had mental health professionals on her show, and Dr. Joshua Coleman was one of those experts. Now, he explained that there's been a radical change in how people think. The old way of thinking was honor thy father and thy mother, no matter what. But now people are asking questions about what is considered abuse, and they are weighing the impacts their families have on their mental health. Now, this is such a growing problem that there are 2 billion toxic family hashtags. Now, families often don't know how to talk to each other, and boundaries aren't set from the beginning. So it's understandable why blood relatives often can't get along. But now there are levels here, many, many levels, and this isn't black and white. And there's a huge difference between annoying behaviors and abusive behaviors. There's also a huge difference between petty bullshit and serious problems. Many loving parents have been cut off by their kids over petty shit. And this I absolutely do not agree with. If I'm jealous of anyone about anything, it's a person who has emotionally mature, emotionally intelligent, supportive, and loyal parents. I'm an advocate of going no contact, but only if it's for the right reasons and only as a last resort. You got to think through this. My decision to go no contact was a last resort, but no one freaking cared anyway. My siblings were relieved and happy when I walked away from our father because, hey, their biggest competition was gone. I don't blame them for feeling that way because the amount of favoritism our father showed to me was grotesque. I mean, from the time I was born, he absolutely showered me with material things and attention, and he did not treat them the same. It was a vulgar display of favoritism, but if the shoe had been on the other foot, they would have accepted all of those gifts and attention too. Any kid would have. As a child, I didn't really get it. Like, that was my life. They didn't live in the house with me and mom and dad, so I thought everything was normal. I mean, I didn't think about myself as the favorite child. I didn't think about anything at all. That was my life. They had their life. When they visited, I was happy to see them, but as the years went by, their resentment and jealousy towards me were very transparent. They hated me, um, and tried to cover that up. I mean, they both sickly adored him, our father. They wanted his attention so bad that it was just pitiful and really pathetic. So they wouldn't dare allow themselves to hate him. So it was much easier and acceptable to hate me. Now, I didn't start to put the pieces together until my parents divorced. I was 17, 18 years old, and I was knocked off the favorites list and totally replaced by my father's new girlfriend's daughter. I got a big dose of what my siblings had always experienced, and that dose kept getting bigger and bigger, as the years went by. And I get into quite a bit of detail about everything that happened in my book, Thought Snob. So I'm not going to go into those specifics now. If you're in a situation where you think going no contact is necessary, I would read my book, Thought Snob. It will probably help you. But my goal for now is to give you enough information and wisdom to help you make a decision, the right decision. And the holidays are always the toughest time for toxic and estranged families. Just because it's the holidays doesn't mean you should accept any abuse, period, from anybody. I made the fatal mistake of doing that way too many times. And it was insanity. I set expectations that each holiday would be better and that everyone would get along and everyone would be treated fairly. And that never happened. Two things were consistent. I always got my feelings hurt because I allowed them to control my emotions, which was my fault. And I always did something I wasn't proud of. The person I was with my family was not and is not who I authentically am. And it took me a long time to figure that out. It took going no contact to admit and accept that fully. They brought out the worst in me. But here's what's ironic. They acted as if they cared more about me when I was a loser, troublemaker, tail-carrying, obese drama queen. I'm 48 years old right now. I started cleaning up my act a long time ago, like way over 20 years ago, and I successfully cleaned it up. I went all the way with the inner work, and I'm pretty proud of everything I've done. However, they, my siblings mainly, and my father, still view me as the 20-year-old loser, troublemaker, tail-carrying, obese drama queen. My situation goes far beyond anything petty. Before I went no contact, I thoroughly thought through every piece of it. And I concluded that I was in a highly toxic and abusive situation. I had cleaned up my act, and they hadn't. So, my perspective was different. My expectations changed. My ability to see the truth was unblocked. I was finally able to admit and accept these three things. Alcoholism was rampant, and I would become an alcoholic if I stayed. The chaos was destroying my mental health. And the third thing, we weren't energetic matches, and they would have to self-reflect for the relationships to be salvaged. They weren't going to do that. They're never going to do that. I even asked my father at one point to see a mental health professional. And he cussed me all to pieces. And I knew he would cuss me to hell and back. But I couldn't take it anymore. And I thought it was at least worth trying, with an ask. And every single time I went around my family, I was accused of outlandish things that I hadn't done. It was just bizarre. And usually those accusations came from one of my father's women, but even though they were outright lying about me, I was just as much to blame because I was there for all of it. Binge drinking, associating for the wrong reasons, not being honest about how I felt, being dependent on my father for my resources. So I played nice with vultures and ended up hating myself for it. I witnessed so much brutal violence, so much, and I got to the point where I refused to be a manufactured product of their mindsets. There was zero loyalty in my family because everyone was fighting for one person's attention. And anytime I hear someone say they're the favorite child, I know their family is toxic. Any parent who plays favorites is doing detrimental damage to their children. Now, I want to make one thing abundantly clear here. I'm not acting like that I am better than my family or that I am not at fault. I just went over several actions that made me part of the problem, not the solution. Also, I completely own all of my past shitty behaviors in my book. Every single one of them, I took responsibility for. So that's where you need to start the process. Self-reflect. If you're thinking about going no contact, you need to self-reflect first. Now, I self-reflected, but no one else did. On Oprah's podcast about going no contact, one of the mental health professionals said that self-reflection is the hallmark of emotional maturity. I agree with that. A person must be highly emotionally intelligent to admit they were at fault. Back in 2015, after a family July 4th gathering that went off the rails, I did a lot of self-reflecting, and I asked myself some honest questions. Now, this is shadow work. It's not for the emotionally weak, man. I mean, emotionally weak people blame, complain, criticize, and they do not take responsibility for their actions. They point fingers. I was like that too. But the difference between them and me is I'm not anymore, and I haven't been for a long time. Nobody wants to give me credit for that shit, though. Nobody wants to give me credit for anything. So if you evolve in an emotionally immature family, you won't survive in that family. They are not your tribe. They will resent you and possibly outright hate you for evolving. They will hate you because you leveled up. If you reach a higher level of success, they will resent your success and they will say that it's unfair. They will judge how you got to that level of success, and they will tell themselves and anyone who will listen that you had advantages and opportunities that they didn't. That lets them off the hook, right? You'll scare them and they'll feel very insecure. But instead of learning from you, they will be jealous of you. There's no fixing that. Don't even try. So back to the questions that I asked myself many years ago. I thought about how I had contributed to the problem. And the issue being one, big, dysfunctional, abusive, toxic family. That was the problem, right? And as a child, teenager, and on into my early 20s, I liked empathy for everyone involved. I lied a lot. I was my father's evil little sidekick, and he and I talked about everyone behind their backs, including my siblings. I was not self-reliant, and that was the core root of all of the problems with me. And 1,000% my fault. I was completely dependent on my father for all my resources, and there were many strings attached to those resources. And by the time I started my self-reflection, I was self-reliant, thank God. Otherwise, going no contact would have been impossible. I lacked self-awareness. I set unrealistic expectations for everyone involved, and that led to a continual, spiral of disappointment and heartbreak, because the one thing that I really wanted was for someone to choose my side, and no one would, ever. The next thing I did was think about how I felt when I was around them, my family, and away from them. The pattern was crystal clear. I felt awful around them, and I felt peace away from them. Now, currently, I know some things that I didn't know back then. Our bodies tell us everything we need to know, but we often allow our minds to run the show, actually way too much. My nervous system was telling me that I didn't belong around those people. God will reveal a person's true character in unexpected ways, and God has shown me time and time again that my blood relatives are not my tribe. That's a tough pill to swallow. So here are some things you need to seriously consider if you're toying with going no contact. You need to think about if you're ready. Are you emotionally ready for this? Because it can get brutal. In my situation, no one took my side. So birthdays, holidays, family reunions, they were all together. And I was a lone soldier. That's tough. But if you survive it, nothing can break you emotionally. You'll come out of the situation wise and someone that can't be fucked with. The next thing, how will you feel when someone passes away? Now, here's where I stand on this. I don't think that death or special occasions should bring people together who aren't meant to be together. I grieve the absence of my father, and he was still alive. Hell, he's still alive. I don't know how, but he is. I didn't want to go no contact with him, but he showed me he didn't care enough about me to make things right. Zero effort. And so 10 years ago, I asked myself, Paula, how will you handle it when he passes? After many years, the truth finally hit me. There's no relationship, and we're both still alive. The next thing, can you self-reflect? If you can't, I strongly advise you to think this through before you cut ties with anybody, okay? The next thing I want you to consider is, do your parents or does your parent or your family make your life better or worse? Is someone or maybe multiple people interfering with your progress in life, or are they placing your mental health in jeopardy? Okay? Next thing, have you tried to talk to your family? And my conscience is clear on that one. I tried to talk to my father. I wrote letters. I tried to talk and get him to see the reality of our situation. I tried to open the door to some healthy communication with my half-sister, and that went to hell in a handbasket fast. That has been as recent as February of this year. So have you put forth the effort to talk? If you haven't, think about that. And the next thing, who's the culprit? You need to evaluate the common denominator logically. Who's the driver of the family conflict? There's usually a driver. An excellent way to assess this is to look at the facts. No opinions, facts. And this evaluation may include you. Now, lastly, can you forgive the person or people and the situation? Can you forgive the situation? I can honestly tell you that I wholeheartedly forgave my father many years ago. I harbor zero resentment towards him and am very grateful for the good times and the wonderful qualities I inherited from him. I learned a lot from my father, but he has demons he won't face. Now, I understand why. I'm surprised he was able to show me the love and affection he did because he wasn't shown that as a child. Empathy. That's how I forgave him and everyone involved. And these people didn't give a damn about being forgiven because, of course, they don't think they've done anything wrong. Now, right now, I'm having a personal struggle about going no contact with my half-sister. Going no contact with her isn't the problem. The problem is me being aggravated with myself because I always knew she was resentful and jealous of me, but I stayed in the relationship despite what my intuition said. I stayed in the relationship because I thought I might be wrong and that she did love me and she did care about our relationship. And my intuition was always like, Paula, get her the fuck out. She's a snake. Well, I should have listened to my intuition and cut that relationship off a long time ago. So that's the struggle I'm having now. You might want to think about those things too. Forgiveness is your freedom. You got to learn to, you got to be able to forgive yourself too. And it should go hand in hand with going no contact. If you go no contact and you have no forgiveness plan, your decision will backfire. I cannot stress this enough. And going no contact isn't trendy. You don't cut off a parent because your friend does it or you see a social media video or something. This shit is not trendy. This is serious business. People's lives are at stake. People's mental health is at stake. You need to take this very seriously. When someone asks me, should I go no contact? I'm never going to say yes or no because I'm only hearing one side of the story. And my ego isn't big enough that I would ever consider myself to be qualified to answer that question. But I am qualified to advise and guide and help you make a wise decision that comes from a place of mindful awareness, emotional intelligence, and empathy. I'm credentialed, but I've also lived it. Now, I know this is a deep topic, but one that merits a lot of attention. It's a different time now. In the past, people just accepted the suffering because, so-and-so was their mother or father or brother or sister, and their only way to cope was to complain. That strategy does nothing but bury emotions that desperately need to come out. And eventually they will come out. And unfortunately, sometimes they come out as sickness or a sudden, unexpected blow up. Something you regret, something you don't want. Ultimately, your number one goal in this lifetime is to feel good. You're going to hear me say that a lot. If you feel good, everything else falls into place. Whatever you must do to feel good, do it. And if that involves cutting people out, cut them out. But first, you got to find the truth. Is it you or is it them? I hope this episode helps you in some way. Thank you for listening and subscribing to the Thought Snob podcast. If you have any questions or want to share a personal story, drop it all in the comments. And have a wonderful holiday season. You can always choose to have a wonderful holiday season, and you can always choose not to.
The Thought Snob podcast with Paula Swope has been brought to you by Thought Snob Media in association with Special Purpose Studios. All production, mixing, and sound engineering by me, Will Swope. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. please take a few seconds to give us 5 stars and leave a review. See you on the next Thought Snob podcast with Paula Swope.